So first of all, thank you very much for having accepted to be on our website that is called Gypsy World, which is promoted by the Maranatha Federation. And the main aim is to promote the technological skills and audiovisual skills of young Roma people. If you're so kind as to answer the following questions, please. The first one is, what are the European Commission's main policies for the inclusion of the Roma community? Are there any new significant differences with respect to what has been done until now?
Yes, now the situation of Roma are dealt with in the European Commission by two commissioners. This is quite new. Myself, I'm responsible for employment and social affairs and inclusion, but there is also Commissioner Reding, who is responsible for fundamental rights and justice. And she is taking care of the anti-discrimination aspects. Both are very important because on the side of Madame Reding, to get rid of discrimination, which has been a fundamental problem in the recent years in many European countries, it's crucial to make progress and to be very firm against the negative tendencies. But it's not enough. So it's not sufficient just to eliminate discrimination. We have to support social integration and to improve the social conditions, which means education, employment, housing, healthcare.
Society has always seen us as an obstacle and also as a financial burden, when realistically the most productive and profitable answer for everyone would be to aim towards our inclusion on the labor market as a normal situation. As an economist, what are your thoughts about this? What do you think about this? Do you think it would be necessary to encourage different attitudes that would lead naturally to this acceptance?
Yes, different attitudes have to be encouraged on all sides. Also on the majority society, but of course on the side of the discriminated minority as well, because this vicious circle must not be accepted. And it's very important to see that the marginalization leads to an accumulation of disadvantages, and somehow you have to address the problems on all fronts, on all levels, in order to break this vicious circle and turn the tide.
In
And it's not, I mean, I haven't answered fully. So the point is that it's true that if we allow that the society becomes broken, and segregated communities live apart from the mainstream society, yes, the majority can believe that these minorities just represent a financial cost. In reality, it is a waste, and that's what has been shown by a recent World Bank study, that those people who live in segregated areas, who are not employed, not taken on board, they could contribute to the commonwealth. They could be participating in a productive society, but they don't have the opportunity. And these opportunities have to be created from a very early age through education and skilling.
In 2008, you stated that the strategy for expanding the Eurozone should change due to recession, economic crisis. As you know, the countries that will join in the future also have large Roma communities that await this decision, as this will greatly affect them. In what ways do you think this new strategy will affect Roma people?
It's very hard to tell. Anything about the Eurozone is quite uncertain in these days. We have to see many issues in new light after the Greek crisis. But it is true that for anyone marching towards the Eurozone, fiscal discipline is fundamental. And referring back to the previous question, it is true, for example, Slovakia, which recently joined the Eurozone, they had to depress their public budgets, and they had much less on social integration than in other countries, for example. So it's an issue which has to be thought about very seriously from the fiscal side. And what we have to advocate from the European Commission is that there is always a need to provide adequate funding for social integration, but not only funding, but proper policies. So how much you spend doesn't tell, or how effectively spent, that's the question.
We have been receiving emails about Roma people's meeting at Erdogan on the 14th of March, where we were asked if the act was a mere publicity stunt with the underlying objective of getting the country into the European Union. Do you think this meeting showed a real desire to work for the benefit of the Roma community of Turkey, or was it just a way of impressing the European Commission to try and lose the reputation as discriminators of minority groups?
Well, Turkey is very eager to demonstrate that they are making progress towards the European standards. Recently I met the chief negotiators, and we discussed a few issues concerning the social area and employment, focusing on trade union issues. There are big deficits, for example, on trade union issues, but there are big deficits on minorities as well. And it's going to be a slow progress, but I think they will be sincere, and they will not try to project a false image. We have to work together on a common understanding of human rights and minority rights, and check what progress is made in reality.
Thank you. If we look closely at the large amount of European financial funding for Gypsy people, which goes into different programs, and we compare the investment with the results obtained, it is obvious that something is failing, or that it's somewhere along the line, something is not being done correctly. What do you think about this?
Let's put it this way. Dealing with the situation of the Roma is relatively new on the European Union level. It is a merit of my predecessor, Mr. Spidla, that it became a recognized objective of the European Union to improve the condition of the Roma, and not only leave it to some of the member states where the Roma population is the highest. It is also true that the financial instruments of the European Union have not been tailored to the specific conditions of the Roma communities, and that's why they have not been sufficiently effective, as you said in the question. We have to work on this. This is a time when we are working on a new regulation for the European Social Fund, and trying to find out what kind of practical proposals can follow the communication on the Roma, which just came out this week. So in this work, during this year, we can take into account the experience, the failures or the partial success, and then find new ways to support the Roma communities and the integration. There are three key players: the European Union, the member state governments, and the NGOs, mainly those who represent the Roma themselves, with elected leaders. And there is an element of self-government or self-management in this, but it also takes the commitment of the member state government and the coordination and support from the European Union level. All of them are important for progress.
Thank you. You're from Hungary. And it is a country which, with one of the highest percentages of Gypsy or Roma population in Europe, and where there were a number of tragic incidents or accidents last year against our people. Do you think that appropriate measures have been taken to avoid this to happen again?
Well, these have been very sad and shocking cases where Roma people were killed and entire villages, entire regions intimidated as a result. Unfortunately, this situation is accompanied by a political shift towards the far right. And there is a very unfortunate public sentiment and a very unfortunate political phenomenon with the strengthening of a racist far-right political party. Now, how this trend can be turned around, it's very difficult to tell, but it takes the majority society to bring up more healthy attitudes, more optimism, that the intolerance should be defeated. A lot of people just don't understand the risk of allowing prejudice and intolerance to prevail in localities that struggle with difficult economic situations. It's probably true that people didn't see a proper response from the government in terms of the breakdown of social conditions, the breakdown of security, the breakdown of legality. And that's why they were turning towards the far right in certain areas. And that made an impression that it's acceptable to be intolerant, it's acceptable to be violent. So people have to understand that it's not acceptable, it's not a way towards a solution.
Spain has a large Roma population that in the midst of this recession is desperately trying to find a different way of making a living. The majority of people are traveling, salespeople or market sellers who are suffering as sales have dropped drastically. Are you aware of this? What piece of advice would you give to these people, salesmen and people who are suffering now?
Well, a recession is tough on everyone, especially on low-skilled people. There should be a hope that this year the economy picks up. But in the long run, you cannot just wait for the next recovery, and it's very important that even if someone has a job which pays well in certain times, it's important to invest in something else, to get skills that can bring a more solid job in more difficult times. Or be part of a larger community, an economic enterprise like cooperatives, for example, in which people can help each other and then they can diversify their economic activities with